IBS School Debate is made possible with partnership with Kundutu and NBC. And this is the NCD School Debate. We are going to have lay school debate in 2 weeks' time. Quick mention of our sponsors again: Daltron, Supreme Industries, BSP, Ella Motors, DataNet, Remington, and NCDC. The next 2 schools for the last topic are Badiagua Secondary School and St. Joseph's International. Are you happy to listen to these last schools? Yes. Okay, so please make welcome the St. Joseph team. We have Paulo, Olive, Dion, and Hope. Those are the 4 participants for St. Joseph's. And the Badiagua team is made up of the 4 participants. The first speaker, Adriana. The second, John Clement. Ted Lorraine, and 4th, Eagi Thomas. Please make welcome the 2 teams. Their topic is our education system is ideal for PNG. Badiagua is going for the topic and St. Joseph's International is going against the topic. Now I'd like to call upon the first speaker of the affirmative team.
Good afternoon, Avinuntru and Hadorai Namona to all of you. And to the adjudicators, the timekeeper, and you, the wonderful ladies and gentlemen of this wonderful audience. Before we elaborate further on our topic, which is the education system ideal for Papua New Guinea? I'll introduce myself. My name is Adriana Mehta. I'll be talking about I'll be defining education, and I'll be talking about the positive aspects of our education system. I'll introduce my team. The second speaker is Mr. John Clement. He'll be talking about the structure of the curriculum. The third speaker, Ms. Lauren Gabina, will be talking about the benefits of education system on the student. And our fourth speaker, Mr. Hegi Thomas, will be talking about the economic benefits and summarizing our case. We, the affirmative, believe or affirm that the education system is ideal for Papua New Guinea, being that it is guided by national goals and directive principles in the Constitution. I'll be defining education, and it is education in its simplest meaning in the Papua New Guinean Oxford Dictionary is the process of learning or training people's minds and ability. And I quote, page 12 of Women and Literacy Education for Equality, I quote, "We have learned that education is a highly productive investment," close quote, by William Draper II, Administrator, UNDP. Before the reform, Papua New Guinea curriculum was based on Western beliefs and ideas, mainly to produce Papua New Guineans to administer the country and achieve academic success. It was recognized that this system needed to change. I mean, what were they thinking? In order to provide an education for all citizens of Papua New Guinea, they had to change the system. The education system, or the education reform, redirects the school curriculum towards education for integral human development rather for meeting human workforce needs only. We don't want to educate people who only have the knowledge but don't have the skills. That doesn't make an integrated person, right? The key objective of this system is to develop an education system to meet the needs of Papua New Guinea and its people. Which would provide opportunity for return of children to the village community. National Education Plan, 1996, page 2. The key features of the reform is, 1, a new and more relevant curriculum which emphasizes skills, development, and the maintenance of the local languages of communities. 2, and the increasing access to grade 9, 10, and 11. Ladies and gentlemen, we the government affirm that this education system is ideal for Papua New Guinea because it is culturally oriented and that it will remain and it will be part of us even after this debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, first speaker of the affirmative side. Now we'll have the first speaker of the opponent, sorry.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, adjudicators, fellow speakers, and the audience. My name is Paulo, and I'm the first speaker of the opposition. The topic stated for this debate is that our education system is ideal for PNG. Before I present an overview of my team's case, I would like to define the topic and its key terms. As we all know, our education system implemented here in PNG is the OBE, outcome-based education. And the term ideal, taken from the Encarta dictionary, is defined as the best or the most perfect example, which means that the topic is telling us whether such a system like OBE is suitable for our country. As members of the opposition, we strongly believe that outcome-based education is not ideal for a developing nation like PNG for a number of economic and social reasons. As the first speaker, I will be giving a brief history and background information on outcome-based education in PNG and its reputation worldwide. Our second speaker, Olive, will be discussing the economic constraint and technical feasibility of the implementation of OBE. Dion, our third speaker, will talk on the social costs and effects of OBE. And our fourth and final speaker, Hope, will be adding the finishing touches by summarizing our main points. Before I begin, I would like to rebut on what the first speaker of the opposing team stated. She stated that we have made a reform, and that reform is OBE. Now, OBE sets standards, and the problem is that OBE sets standards which can be too high or too low. Okay, for example, if they set the standard too high, this doesn't allow students which are intelligent students to advance. And in the other way, if it's set too low, this can also risk having students advance for further education. OBE is a student-centered learning philosophy that focuses on measuring student performance, which are called outcomes. Outcomes are actions or performances that embody and reflect competence in using content, information, ideas, and tools properly. OBE contrasts with the old system of education, which mainly focuses on the resources that are available to the student, which are called inputs. The emphasis in an OBE education system is on measured outcomes rather than inputs, such as how many hours students spend in class or what textbooks are provided. Outcomes may include a range of skills and knowledge. It may also include reciting fact to complex analysis and interpretation of subject matter. Thus, we can say the slogan of outcome-based education is to create your own knowledge. OBE was introduced to PNG 10 years ago by CRIP, which is also known as the Curriculum Reform Implementation Project, sponsored by AusAid. CRIP consisted of a team of education consultants from Australia, which they have never taught in a PNG classroom before, and the closest some of them ever got was to the classroom of the Ward Strip Demonstration School. These people worked with a team of counterparts in the PNG Department of Education, most of whom had never heard of OBE before, were not aware of its failure overseas, and were not even in the position to evaluate its sustainability for PNG schools. Also, the mere fact that CRP did not undertake any research studies on what was wrong with the old objective-based curriculum and how it may be improved is not good enough. Therefore, we believe that the only sustainable and ideal approach for mass education in PNG is a prescriptive, locally relevant, skills-based, academically sound, objective-based curriculum supported with teacher-based materials that are practical for use in large classrooms with few resources, and normative assessment that enables us to compare results from school to school and fairly select the best students for limited places available at higher learning institutes. To conclude, the implementation of the outcome-based education reform is believed to be a failed experiment declared DOA, dead on arrival, and is not an ideal education system for PNG. Thank you.
Thank you, first speaker of the opposition side. Now I'd like to call upon the second speaker of the affirmative side.
Good morning all, dear educators. Good afternoon, timekeepers and the fellow debaters. My name is John Clement and I'm the second speaker of the government. Before I proceed, I'd like to rebut on what the first speaker of the opposition team has mentioned. He stated that the curriculum is a risk to the country. Now, actually, the reform of 2003 introduced a more relevant method of learning aimed at meeting the needs of Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guineans provide a relevant basic education for most of the students. Now, on the other hand, you said that OB is a failed system. Now, why is the government funding it every year? Coming back to my points, OB is made up of two reforms. We have the structural reform and the curriculum reform. Now, structural reform is, it basically talks about the grading reforms and lessons taught in Prep 1 and 2, primary being grades 3 to 8, while making grade 9 to 12 the levels in secondary schools. Curriculum reform talks about all the lessons schools schools will be teaching about. Now coming back to my points, excuse me, structural reform. In the structure of the old education system of Papua New Guinea, there were communities, high schools, national high schools, and tertiary institutions. Grade 1 to 6 were the levels in community schools. There were no schools where students were supposed to have been taught in the preparatory level which would have made them better prepared and ready to tackle the following grades. Now, in grade 6, in community school, students set for examinations in order to pass high school certificates. Now, we are talking about the structural reform. Grade 7 to grade 10 were the levels in high school at the time, sorry. In grade 10, students were again examined in order to pass on to national school where they would go to grade 11s and 12s. Finally, in grade 12, students did examinations to go into universities and colleges or tertiary institutions. Right? There were no secondary schools. Now, the introduction of the education reforms in 1993 resulted in the structural reform of 9 years of basic education that included elementary prep, 1, 2, top primary being grades 3 to 8, likewise, I've said earlier, making grades 9 to 12 the levels in secondary schools. Now, the reform of 2003 introduced a more relevant method of learning aimed at meeting the needs of the students. The old way of having grade 7 and 8 in high school has been changed. Now there are 2 upper primary levels in primary schools. The concept of having grade 6 students doing examinations in order to pass on to grade 7 has also been changed. Students do examinations in grade 8 to grade 9 in order to enter grade 9. In all education system, the structures were community schools, high schools, national high schools, and tertiary institutions. Today, in the reform education system, there are elementary schools, primary schools, secondary schools, and tertiary institutions. The curriculum of the old education system of Papua New Guinea was different from the curriculum of the current education system. The subjects that were taken by students in the old education system were slightly different from the subjects taken by students in the current reform education system. Despite the undertaking and teaching of subjects, core subjects, maths, English, science, and social science being unchanged. Now, in the old education system, students were taught more basic subjects at the initial stages of learning, such as grades 1 and 2. Around in grade 8, grade 3, students undertook subjects such as maths, English, environmental studies, social science, and community life. Now, the number of students increased as the grades taught maths, English, environment studies, social science, community life, and commerce. Now, the old system of the education was mere or teaching-centered learning. This provides the opportunity for greater accountability for the customs education to prepare students to be competent future citizens. That is why I strongly believe our education system is ideal for PNG. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the second speaker of the affirmative side. Now we'll call upon the second speaker of the opposition side.
Thank you, MC. Good afternoon, adjudicators, affirmative team, and audience. My name is Olive Mandui, and I am the second speaker of the opposition. As mentioned, our topic is our education system ideal for Papua New Guinea? I'll be concentrating on the economic aspect, but before I go into my argument, I would just like to make a rebut on what the government has stated. One of your speakers stated that, pardon me, our first speaker, I would just like to reassure you that our first speaker did not mention that it is a risk to our country, but he said it is a risk having students advance in education. We're saying that if the standard is too high, this can prevent or be a constraint for students to advance to a higher education. And OBE does just that. On to my argument. We believe that OBE, or this new curriculum, is not ideal for Papua New Guinea. Firstly, because in Papua New Guinea right now, due to lack of funding or misappropriation of funds, there's a scarcity in the level of resources that should be helping in the implementation of OBE. By this, I mean there are no proper resources such as textbooks, there's no proper infrastructure like buildings, or equipments, etc., such as computers or educational videos. I myself, as a student, have experienced this lack in resources. Back in term 1, my history class and we were required by OBE to learn about the prehistory of Papua New Guinea. But you see, the major setback for us was that we didn't have textbooks to learn from. So how were we going to learn? My teacher, using her initiative, researched on the internet and the library. From her findings, she compiled it into a book and taught us the contents. So at least we were catered for because we had proper access to internet and a good library. But let's just think outside of St. Joseph's now. Some government schools, and especially those who are unfortunate in the rural areas, who do not receive proper funding, do not have access to internet or proper libraries. How can they fulfill what is required of them by OBE? PNG right now, who's experiencing obvious social economic problems, is not in the right position to implement successfully or sustain such an education system which is so demanding. Secondly, teachers training, the expertise involved. Teachers are the major, or they play the major role, or the human resources who play the major role in the effective implementation of OBE. However, there are teachers out there who know little of OBE themselves. An example would be a teacher now working at St. Joseph's. He's a young graduate from the University of Goroka, but when interviewed if he knew about OBE, he said that while studying at the university, they were only mentioned about the concept of OBE, but weren't taught in depth, or it wasn't taught as a unit. So if there are teachers out there who do not know what they are going to teach, how can they teach effectively? In turn, and most importantly, how can the students learn effectively? Even some education officers don't know or do know little about OBE. It is like the blind leading the blind. And for a developing nation like Papua New Guinea, that's very dangerous. Where will our country be headed? Third and lastly, let's not forget that OBE was thrown in our face and forced to be accepted and implemented without feasible studies done. In other words, we weren't ready for it when it hit our shores. The Australian government, through AusAid, strongly suggested that we accept and adopt this curriculum, despite the fact that this is overwhelming, despite the fact that it failed. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I repeat, it failed in their own country, back in the US where it originated, and along with all the other countries who were signatories to the curriculum. So just take, for instance, Australia and the USA. These are extremely developed countries I'm talking about, who had the money, the infrastructure, and the expertise to successfully implement it. But yet it failed. Why? And now it has been established in Papua New Guinea, a developing country with, as I've mentioned earlier, obvious social economic problems, no proper resources or expertise to support it. It is just not possible. OBE is termed as DOA and deserves to be termed as DOA, dead on arrival. Therefore, my teammates and I strongly believe that our education system is not ideal for Papua New Guinea. Thank you.
Thank you, second speaker of the opposition team. Now we'll have the third speaker of the affirmative team.
Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, in rebuttal to what your second speaker has said, it is true that it is true that OBE has been rejected in Australia and in the USA. Then why is it been introduced in PNG? Actually, OBE has not been rejected in Australia, etc. It has been interpreted and implemented in different ways, in different states, and in other parts of the world. Papua New Guinea has developed its own version of outcomes and based education. A version with a focus on what students know and can do at the end of a learning period, rather than a focus on what the teacher intends to teach. Papua New Guinea chose an outcome approach to education reform to improve the standard of learning by teachers having a clear purpose and focus, and students knowing what they have to know or to be able to do. Example, the students have the same clear purpose as the teacher. Now to my argument. OBE, as stated by the first speaker, promotes our traditions and cultural values, or should I say is culturally oriented. With OBE in our curriculum, well, I should say it promotes gender equity. At every level of education, more males are represented than females. In major studies, cultural factors have been found to be the major obstruction to increasing participation of females at all levels of education. Access to informal education and training programs is even more difficult for women who are illiterate, and the literacy rate among women is estimated at around 40%. Higher enrollments of girls exist in regions where single-sex education was provided in the past by missions. The Gender Equity in Education Policy, Department of Education 2003, provides a framework for both principles and practices to improve the lives of all children and promotes gender equity between girls and boys. Okay. Now think about this. Before OBE was introduced, HIV and AIDS wasn't talked openly about in schools. With OBE now in our curriculum, HIV and AIDS actually has its own curriculum and is taught as a subject in schools. Now to the economical side. Students, what should I say? In other countries, there are, more job opportunities. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Job opportunities. They have more job opportunities than us. For the education system, OBE, we are now learning about, technical stuff. Subjects such as home economics and technical skills. They've been introduced into Papua New Guinea since the OBE has taken place. Now, subjects such as this help us to, be more productive. OBE also promotes self-reliance. You cannot be expected to be spoon-fed all the time. Before the OBE was in place, teachers come in, place all the notes on the board, they explain everything to you, and, you think that you have everything, you can be spoon-fed all the time. With OBE, it promotes you to be self-reliant. You say you have no textbooks in place, but it tells you that you cannot only be spoon-fed. You go out, do your own research, and you know what to do. Okay. Okay, lastly, to conclude, OBE promotes our traditions, cultural values, and effective relationships between people, or should I say, is culturally oriented, and also promotes gender equity in education.
Thank you. That was the third speaker of the affirmative team. Now I'd like to call upon the third speaker of the opposition.
Good afternoon, adjudicators, mistress of ceremony, timekeeper, audience, and fellow debaters. Before I go to my points, I'd like to rebut on what the government has stated. She said that the OBE was not rejected by Australia. Okay, let me tell you this. According to the University of Sydney professor Ken Eltis, who published the finding on the outcome-based education curriculum, said, and I quote, "There is no evidence that the approach has been successfully implemented anywhere in the world, and there appears little, if any, research proving it is superior to what is being replaced." Even former Australian Education Minister Dr. Brendan Nelson described the outcome-based education system as a cancer. Also, the former University of Cape Town Vice Chancellor and World Bank Director Mamphela Ramphele said, and I quote, not a single country in the world, in this world, has undertaken the OBE, outcome-based education system, and succeeded. Canada tried it. They dumped it. The United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and New Zealand tried it. They also dumped it. These are well-developed country, and a country like ours, if it hasn't worked in their country, do you think it'll work in ours? The outcome-based education system stifles individual potential for excellence and achievement by holding the entire class to the level of learning attainable by every child. This basically means that students who are capable of achieving A's will be getting B's and C's because most of the students in their class will be getting these grades. So it pulls the smarter children down to the level of learning attainable by every child in the class. Under the OBE, the year 10, 11, and 12 next year are all seen as guinea pigs. This means that the current year 9, 10, 11s are being experimented to see whether the OB system will be effective or not. These are actual lives, guys. These are actual lives we're dealing with. These are the future of our nation. The education department should have been prepared before implementing this system, education system, which has already been mentioned by the first two speakers, has failed in other countries. Workloads for teachers have doubled with the OBE, little incentives for teachers, and many teachers are leaving or resigning because of the OBE. We need teachers who are professionals, and not any person with a diploma or degree. This will drop the standard of education. And because of the OBE, the standard of education in our country, Papua New Guinea, is in question. OBE is practical and skill-focused, meaning flexible learning and learning takes place at their own pace. And because of that principle, OBE works in classes of smaller sizes. Classes from 10 to 25 students per teacher is good for effective implementation of OBE. At our school, St. Joseph's, we have more than 25 people in a class. And I am more than 100% sure that in most of your classrooms today, there are more than 25 students. And the OBE system is not practical for classes 35 and over. Given the very high teacher-student ratio in Papua New Guinea, OBE is already ineffective. OBE is time-consuming. Teachers have programs to teach, deadlines to meet, and get students ready for certificate examination, grade 8, grade 10, and grade 12. And if a teacher is dealing with students on a one-to-one basis, which the OBE teaches, content will not be covered and the students will not be well prepared for their examinations. Lastly, there even is a website on the internet called rausimobelongpng.org. You can go check it out for yourselves. On this website, there are numerous articles by teachers expressing that the OBE system is ineffective and it is not ideal for Papua New Guinea. So if our teachers who are responsible for educating the children for today, who will be our future leaders, believe that the OBE is not ideal for our country, then why are we going ahead with the OBE? And that is why we, the opposition, strongly believe that the current education system, which is the outcome-based education system, is not ideal for Papua New Guinea. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the third speaker of the opposition side. This is the IBS NCD school debate. We are in Pool A. The school's debating on topic 3, which is our education system is ideal for PNG. Now we will have the final speaker from Badiagua Secondary School going for the topic.
Good afternoon, judges, students, guests, and the opposing team. Okay, good afternoon, sir. Okay, before I proceed on to my arguments and summarize, I would like to rebut on what my opposing speaker has said. He said that OB is time-consuming and teachers working overtime. But teachers work overtime because they are getting paid, right? Right, okay. It's time consuming, of course, time consuming, but children develop at stages. You cannot go into school and enroll someone at grade 6. He has to start at level La. The level of understanding has to develop at some point. So I move on to my argument. I'd like to summarize my themes, points. OBE, the reform, outcome-based education, structural and curriculum reform. Basically, it integrates technical and education. It puts them together. Before this was considered, GGA, Grand Chief Police Matane, he was consulted. About 60% of the consultancy came from him. And he stated that there is this blend, technical and education all in one. So schools taking up, extra subjects like metalwork, woodwork, self-development skills. You will all be aware of that. OB is not a failed system. If you are considering only the biased views, then you'll say it's a failed system. It promotes independence. You work at your own pace, you research, so you learn what you want to learn. The skills obtained, metalwork, woodwork, agriculture, technical knowledge, this all will help after you leave school. The old system, it taught only what you could know and then move on to the next grade, but it didn't consider those ones that failed. This, it integrates that. So when you fail, you can go back to agriculture, use the land, woodwork, then you can sustain yourself from there. Also, I was shocked to see that they said that it's a failed system. But did you know that the OSAID is funding this education system every year, and the funding is increasing. This year it's by 9 million. So that's a lot of money. The OBE, it analyzes the traits of students in terms of individual levels of intelligence, the individual levels of qualifications attained, and the kind of occupation portion that people will attain after school or dropping out. For that, in government schools, you will all agree with me and say, yeah, when we leave school, we won't use physics or chemistry or all this. We won't use this to help ourselves. We'll go back to what's there, the ground. We'll work with them to earn our living. Because of this OB, extra subjects, guidance, or PD, that helps students, continue on, motivates them. Also, social issues like HIV/AIDS are mentioned in there, violence against women. It sort of helps social, yeah. Notes finished. Okay. OB is suitable for Papua New Guinea because as all the facts have stacked up, economical, social, political, educational. For a student to prosper, we need a starting point, and that's education. OB will help us when we are advancing. There's gender equity in there, right? You will notice that in most of the classes, there are many girls, whereas in the past, there were only few girls taking up physics or chemistry. You will notice that. The skills help students. More funding helps us. So, in 1945, an education theorist and developer, Theodore Davis, I quote, "Education is the proving ground for the ability and hence the selective agency for placing people in different status according to their abilities." It doesn't say their know-how, but it says their abilities. With that, I will sum it up by saying, me and my team, we agree on the subject. And OB is ideal for our country. Thank you.
Thank you. Final speaker of the affirmative team. Now we'll have the final speaker as well for the opposing team.
Good afternoon, adjudicators, staff and students of IBS, members of the audience, and of course, members of the government team. As a member of the opposition, I believe that our education system, which is the OBE, is not ideal for Papua New Guinea. Before I go on to summarizing what my fellow speakers have established, I would like to make rebuttals against the government team. Firstly, they had stated that teachers are working overtime. That's why they get paid. Well, teachers' salaries haven't changed so far. Keep in mind that teachers are one of the lowest paid public servants in this country. And without incentives, we could risk losing more teachers resigning and leaving the education industry. You also stated that the OBE system is not a failed system because AusAid is giving us more money. The money being given by AusAid has been increasing. But what's the point of the OB system not failing if the money has been increasing? If you look at a country like Australia, they've got more money than we have here in Papua New Guinea. And if it failed in their country, what more for developing countries such as PNG? Now on to my summary. As our first speaker has stated, OBE is a student-centered learning philosophy that focuses on measuring student performances, which are outcomes, whereas the traditional education focuses on the resources available to the student. In practice, OBE discourages direct instruction of facts, and therein lies great controversy. Everywhere OBE has been implemented, it has led to claims of dumbing down the curriculum. That is, making school education less academic and more about making students feel good about what they actually learned rather than focusing on what they should be learning. As the third speaker has stated, OBE is an egalitarian scheme that stifles individual potential for excellence and achievement by holding the entire class to the level of learning attainable by every child. To accomplish this, children are placed in groups for cooperative learning and may be given a group grade instead of individual grades. Even cooperative learning researchers admit that this strategy is to eliminate grading and competition in the classroom. However, competition is good, seeing that every one of these students will be playing by the rules of survival of the fittest when they finish their years of education and enter the real world. On the economical aspect, the OBE could not be implemented successfully in schools which have small class sizes, could only be implemented in schools which have small class sizes, where students have access to extensive learning resources such as books, computers, educational videos and games, internet, and a library, as well as qualified teachers who know how to implement complex curricular systems. When we say this, we shouldn't only be thinking about the schools in the provincial capitals, but also in the rural areas. Considering this, OBE just could not be sustained in PNG primary schools within the limits of infrastructure, human resources, and budget allocations. Why? Well, most of our schools do not have a library and hardly any textbooks. In 90% of schools, there is no electricity, no computers, no TV, no videos, thus canceling out the extensive learning resources required for the OBE to become effective. Class sizes average about 50 to 1 teacher, and in many rural schools, children still sit on the floor with no desks. Some schools are even short-staffed, where one teacher looks after 2 classes by running back and forth all day. And to top it all off, the majority of PNG primary teachers only have a grade 10 education plus a couple of years at a teacher's college. As Speaker 2 has stated, there were no preparations for the OBE. How can teachers teach a curriculum they know very little about? How can we expect students to create their own knowledge in these circumstances? The only reasonable approach would be, as our first speaker has stated, the objectives-based curriculum, and not the current system we are using, which is OBE. At least with the objectives-based curriculum, you know what you're supposed to learn and you work towards it. As Speaker 3 has established, workload for teachers have doubled with the OBE. Keep in mind that teachers are one of the lowest paid public servants in this country. With their workload doubled and little change in their salaries, many teachers are leaving and resigning. We, as a developing nation, cannot risk this, seeing that they are a major part of the human resources needed for education. Despite widespread criticism of the OBE, including that it has even failed in developed countries like the US, Australia, not to mention Canada, South Africa, and even New Zealand, to name a few, our education department has gone ahead with it. The education department is not listening because it's fearful of losing USAID-funded projects all over the countryside. We shouldn't feel obligated to accept the system based on the relationship we have with Australia. It is a clearly failed education system being forced upon the people of Papua New Guinea by Australia and the PNG government. A strong public perception stands that this is yet another plot to purposely slow down PNG's overall education development. What was wrong with the old system in the first place? Nothing. Only the fact that there was a lack of resources. Now, why are we trying to implement a whole new education system instead of investing in resources to cater for the old one? That would cost a lot less than setting up a whole new one that failed numerous times in much more fertile land. To meet future challenges, PNG requires a workable education system that turns out students trained and able to think critically, who are ready for the challenges of the labor market for being citizens of this great country. And from what we have seen from the experiences of other countries, OBE system just isn't the answer. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, we, the opposition, firmly and most strongly believe that our education system, which is the OBE, is not ideal for our country, Papua New Guinea.
Thank you. Final speaker of the opposition side. Please, a round of applause for the two teams. Now we'll have 5 minutes question time. Please, audience, when you are asking your questions, no personal attacks to any participants, and make sure your questions are clear. To the participants, when you are answering the questions, make sure you're answering it in a diplomatic way. Don't also have any personal attack to the person asking the question. It's vice versa. So we'll have the first gentleman from Sogeri National High School.
My question will be directed to the government side. And my question will be directed to the government side. And I'd like to ask, here in Port Moresby, we have city schools, we have access in televisions and internet, we can do many researches. But how about the schools which are located in the remote part of the country, Papua New Guinea? Will they do better research and carry out the proper implementations of the OBE? I'm asking this question to the government system, government side. Are you completely 100% sure that this OBE curriculum will be effective to the remotest part of the country, Papua New Guinea? That's the question.
Okay, right now the governments and the NGOs, sorry, they're funding the libraries in the remote areas. At least there's 75% of the libraries in the remote areas. That's where you can get your information, like developing a skill. So I guess that's how you can get your information. The government and the NGOs are spending more funds on the libraries that are provided in the remote areas. So right now we have the 75% of libraries that are established in the remote areas. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have one more question from a rep from POMIS.
I'm sorry, this question is directed to the government side. For outcome-based education to work effectively, a major role in that is self-motivation. But a lot of, around PNG, many students themselves have enormous responsibilities at home and other commitments to family, etc. Have you factored this into how this could affect their self-motivation and accordingly their education in making your judgments about outcome-based education? Sorry, have you factored in accounts such as, have you factored in, have you taken into account the situation home life has on outcome-based education regarding self-motivation in making your judgments and allegations on outcome-based education? Sorry, would you like me to repeat the question, or? Yeah, okay, sorry. Excuse me. Have you factored in personal life, the effect that would have on self-motivation, which is key to outcome-based education, before you made your allegations and judgments about PNG learners and students?
Yeah, to answer your question, as my first speaker has mentioned, outcome-based education, structural reform and curriculum reform. In structural reform, there are grades with subjects. Okay, so you are probably in grade 11, right? 12, oh, my bad. Okay, well, you have subjects like guidance. So if you are talking about commitments and time management, then guidance would help you there.
We'll take one more question. Okay, lady at the back, please.
Sorry, my question is going to go towards the people that are against the government. OBE is also taught practically. Is also taught practically. Taught, sorry, my bad. Or subjects too. As a matter of fact, looking back in our ancestral times, usually, our ancestors, they teach their children, or I should say some of our grandparents, how to make their own gardens, and that is called independence. Okay, well, not all students are intelligent, please, mind you. My question is that if we don't learn the practical lessons and all that in the schools, what are your considerations of the children that are going to be dropping out? Huh? Will you only live in your, will you only be benefiting on your intelligence? What about practical? We also generate income from practical. And mind you, we are all Papua New Guineans, not foreigners. And our grandparents teach us how to be independent, not dependent. So, government, can you please, sorry, my friends. The opponents, can you please elaborate more or tell me how these people are going to benefit if they drop out from their grade, please?
Thank you for your question. Well, so your question is, what are the other opportunities students may have if they do drop out? But what we stated was that your question. Could you just readdress? Could you just ask your question again, please? Sorry. Sorry.
Sorry, my question is, if they don't teach subjects like practical or technical lessons, then if the students drop out from their grades, how are they going to benefit? Because I believe that most of us Papua New Guineans, we use skills to be creative and to generate income. So can you further explain if we don't teach like practical or technical lessons in
Okay.
the education system?
Thank you. Well, even if students do drop out of school due to, as we've mentioned, all our points, OBE not being ideal, they still have other opportunities because there are other institutions such as vocational institutions that are provided for further learning, such as IBS itself. They can come here and further their studies even if they drop out of school later on. And DBTI, etc., stuff like that. Thank you. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. That's the end of our question time. Now we'll have one of the judges to come and make a few remarks of the two teams. We'll have Mr. Rakob Tony.
Right, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I guess this program may have stimulated a lot of minds at this moment, okay? And that's very good. It's a very good sign, okay? For myself, from my personal perspective, I see this as firing up potential seeds in a cocoon, okay? This is what I see and perceive. Okay, the more prepared you are, okay, the more hard time you're giving it to the judges to make a decision. So I think this is a good sign. So thank you very much. I don't have much to say. I believe two of our judges have given their views already and instructions already, so I don't have much to say. But one thing that you will impress us, the judges, is the way you outline your speech, okay? And the other thing is teamwork, okay? Teamwork, keeping up the momentum of the speaker before you. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause again to Badiaga and St. Joseph's. As they leave the stage, the Badiaga participants were Adriana, John, Michaeline, and Hagi. Thank you, Badiaga Secondary School. The St. Joseph's team were Paulo, Olive, Dion, and Hope. Thank you, St. Joseph's. Before we have the announcing of winners by one of the head judges, we'll give them time, like maybe 5 minutes or so they can add up the scores. So we're going to invite anyone from the audience to come up and say something or share a joke if you want to, or comment on the performances so far in the morning session and the afternoon. So while you're thinking of something to say, just few announcements. Tomorrow, the Pool B competition starts at 9, so we'll encourage schools to come early so we can start on time. Those other schools who are not taking part or who has taken part today, you can come as well. And Friday, after lunch, will be the presentation of the overall winners, the finalists. But today, or this afternoon, the judges will tell us the winners of the morning session and the afternoon sessions. So before anyone could come up, let us all acknowledge the judges, the judges' hard work of listening and taking points. It's Dr. Mark Solon, Miss Ashwin, and Mr. Rakob. I think they are ready now, so we'll call upon Dr. Solon to tell us the winners of today's debate.
I'd like to, first of all, congratulate the speakers. And let's give them an applause. And I want to share with you also the most challenging experience for this afternoon, although I think the speakers also had their challenging moments, but I think they've come out all the better for the experiences, and I congratulate them also for that, their contribution to the discussions this afternoon. But I think the most difficult and challenging experience belongs to the judges. As you agree, as we moved on, the speakers gave us a lot to think about, and I'm sure they gave you a lot to think about as well. And that's why we were just sort of going from one to the other. Maybe I sort of click to here, you know, which is good because we've got quality staff. This morning, we challenge you to come out and speak. And, you know, I think I can speak on behalf of the judges and the listeners as well that the speakers have taken us to a level that is very, very high. And we will continue. We are looking forward to tomorrow. So in fairness to the people tomorrow, I think it's only fair that we keep you in suspense. We'd like to make sure that tomorrow we would want to announce the speakers that are advancing for today as well as the ones for tomorrow. And we look forward to tomorrow because it is going to be exciting, and please come. Please come because we are all learning. We are all learning and the information is excellent. Some of you were quoting from the books. Those are some things that we teach students at universities, especially at teachers' colleges. And some of you are out there, you're already researching. So there you go. We have everything to be proud of, all of you. And so we look forward to you coming tomorrow, and we continue with the exercise and the challenges that we present to one another. Congratulations, everyone. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you.
So the adjudicators have decided that they'll keep us all in suspense. So if you want to know who won, then you have to come tomorrow. So did you learn something from today's debate? Yes? Are we going to see you tomorrow? No? Or maybe you can just call and find out and be here on Friday? That's not keeping up the spirit. Okay, so thank you to all the schools that have participated for today. We hope to see everyone again tomorrow. But if you can't make it, then Friday is the presentation after lunch. That's the presentation of the finalists. Okay, so thank you very much for coming to this IBS school debate competition. And we're going to have round or pool B competing tomorrow. Thank you very much, and see you all tomorrow.